All right, well, welcome everyone. Hopefully you can see us up here in the little corner, but we have HMS parent Stacy Sheriff is here with us tonight, and Stacy is the Dean of Social Emotional Learning and at remind me of what school, Stacy?
I'm at View Ridge Elementary Arts Academy in Bremerton.
Yes, thank you. And she has worked with our staff before. She's definitely a go-to person for us with lots of great information. She's so graciously donating her time to be with us today. And I am going to turn this over to her. If you do have questions as you go, um, we can't necessarily see you if you're raising your hand just because we've got the screen share going. So if you have questions, go ahead and take yourself off mute. Stacy, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. You can also, I have the chat up also. So if you wanted to throw a question into the chat, I will try to keep my eye on that as well. Um, but like I said, or like Amy said, so I am the Dean of Social Emotional Learning at View Ridge Elementary in Bremerton. If you're wondering what that job means, so is everybody else, because it's totally made up by the Bremerton School District. But this is my third year doing that job. So I do a lot of kind of like tier one SEL support for teachers in the classroom. I do a lot of discipline for the kiddos, kindergarten through fifth grade. And then before that, I taught special ed preschool for 12 years. So I've kind of run the whole elementary spectrum now. I always say oh, do I have everybody still?
You do.
Okay.
Spotlit you so that everybody could see
Okay.
that. Sorry.
Oh, cool. I was just making sure it changed, so I'm good. Okay. It's been a while since I've done a Zoom presentation since COVID times. So I have to get used to talking at a computer again for a minute. But anyway, so I do a lot of disciplinary things with the kiddos, and a lot of like small group or one-on-one kind of stuff. I work really closely with our school counselor. And then how I'm connected to Harbor Montessori is my son Milo is in the Mulberry classroom with Miss Maria in the Tracyton campus. He's pre-K this year, so he'll be in kindergarten with me next year. And I'll tell you a little bit more about him because you'll hear his name a lot, because a lot of the things we're going to talk about are things that I do at home with him, as well as with some of my kiddos at school. So we'll just kind of jump in. And like Amy said, if you have a question, please stop me. You can unmute yourself and just kind of ask the question or pop it into the chat. And I'll try to keep my eye on that also. But I'm hoping we can kind of meet the needs that you have. I really appreciate those of you who responded to the Google form, because I definitely use those responses to kind of build what we're going to talk about today. So with that, we'll just kind of get started. Hopefully you can all see my screen here. So one thing we're going to talk about pretty heavily today is conscious discipline, and that is a program that we use in the Bremerton School District. We've used it for about 3 or 4 years now. And in my time in education, I've done a lot of different like positive behavior supports. So like PBIS and there's some de-escalation training, all these things that have all been really good. But conscious discipline has kind of been this thing that encompasses all the good things from all of those programs. It does a lot with brain science. We're going to talk a lot about the brain, and kind of how we can utilize that information for how we interact with upset or how we can help our kiddos navigate the world. And then it also has a lot it's big at its core. Its main thing is that we have to do the work first before we can expect our kids to do the work. And so it's a lot of kind of reflecting on ourselves, and how we're doing, and then modeling that for our kids. So with that, we're going to jump and get started. I hear somebody. Does somebody have a question? Or just an accidental unmute? I do that all the time. It's all good. Um, I love a good quote. So you're going to see a lot of quotes in this presentation. And I pulled them all from Conscious Discipline. So our first one, just kind of to get us in the zone here, is in this atmosphere of uncertainty, fostering safety throughout predictability is especially important. Our kids are seeking safety first, and we'll see that in our brain science work that we do. But that's a big part of what we're going to be talking about today. All right, here, quick agenda for us. We're going to talk kind of an overview of conscious discipline and the brain state model, the 7 powers of the conscious adult. That's how we handle ourselves before we handle some of our kids. We're going to talk about rules and expectations, or expectations and routines, because I know a lot of you are interested in that, and I've got a great resource for you. And then we'll talk about responding to upset with some different strategies. And then I pulled some problem solving things from the form that you filled out, or some of you filled out. So we'll kind of individualize that. And then if we have time, anybody's welcome to jump in and we can problem solve some stuff. I love to just problem solve behavior. It's my favorite thing to do. So yeah, that's kind of what we're going to do tonight. All right. As I said, Milo is my 4.5-year-old. He'll be 5 in March. And he attends the Tracyton campus of Harbor Montessori with Miss Maria. And then Charlie is his big sister. She's 7, almost 8. And they are two polar opposites of the same genetics. So I heard someone once describe kids as either dandelions or orchids. So like your dandelions are going to grow through a crack in the pavement, whether you want them to or not. No matter what kind of environment we give them, they are going to flourish. They're going to do well. They might need a little help, but most of the time they can figure it out themselves. And then our orchids, it's like you can do the best job and you can follow all the steps and it's still going to need extra support. Like I don't know about you, but I've never done well with an orchid. So if you are familiar, you know what I'm saying. I joke, I took the metaphor a little farther. So Charlie is for sure my dandelion. She she was fine no matter what we did. We put some things in place when she was a toddler, but didn't really need a whole lot. She was a really excellent toddler. And then Milo came along, and he is my Pisces baby. He's a roller coaster of emotion. His emotional pendulum swings far and fast. And so I describe him not quite as an orchid, but as a Christmas cactus. So if you've ever had a Christmas cactus, you know that like they're nice and they are green and they stay green and they're pretty easy to care for, but you have to do some pretty specific things to get them to bloom. And Milo's kind of my Christmas cactus in that he's got a really good core. He's funny and he's bright and he is energetic and he's friendly, but he also needs some extra stuff. So you'll hear about them a lot. That's why I wanted to give you kind of a background. And they are the best of friends until they're not. They do really well together, but a lot of the things I use at school for like personal conflict resolution, I use with the kids at home too. So that's a little bit about them. So we're going to start with our overview and our brain science and all that. So of course, we're going to add another quote. And Dr. Becky Bailey is the author of Conscious Discipline. So you'll see a lot from her. And this one is, at every moment, you have a choice between approaching the world with a spirit of love and learning or one of fear and punishing. And that choice is yours. And I really like that one because it really does talk about how it's how we're viewing things for how we're going to kind of help our kids. Alrighty. So if you're familiar with like brain science stuff, this might be kind of a review. For me, I love to go over it over and over again because it helps me remember things. We're going to talk a little bit about brain science for a minute because it'll really help us with our work that we're doing tonight. So we start in our survival state. So that is in our brain stem. That's that red piece on the picture there. Our survival state, that's our oldest and most primitive part of our brain. So it's the part that holds our fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response. Our fawn is a new one that I've learned where it's kind of like you just kind of go along with what everybody's saying because you don't feel safe to kind of go off on your own. So you're going to just kind of like, yeah, that sounds good. I'm going to do those things that you're telling me to do. And that was a hard one for me to kind of get a grip on, that like they're in their safety. They're trying to figure out if they're safe when they're doing that too. So your brainstem holds that response. It's kind of like our alarm system. So in conscious discipline, they talk about, I don't know if you remember those, they're clackers. So like they look like hands and you can wave them back and forth and they sound like clapping. And a healthy clacker is like a nice rhythmic. Whereas like when we get scared or excited or something happens and our brainstem kind of kicks in and goes, are we safe right now? Our clacker is going to be going crazy. Most of us have a healthy alarm system, and we normally have like a nice steady clacker, but some of our kids are born with a very excited clacker. And that can be really difficult for them to regulate because that's their baseline. So we have to kind of remember that when working with some of our kiddos. So a healthy alarm system sounds like when real or imagined danger is around us. In caveman times or in primitive times, it's, like there's a wolf. So there's a wolf around me. I know that I'm in danger, and my brainstem's going to react with that fight, flight, freeze situation. And then if it's healthy, it shuts off when the wolf is gone. So I'm back to my normal state. I'm good, ready to go. Nowadays, hopefully there's not a real wolf in the room with us, but an imaginary one or something that still makes us feel like we're in danger. So we switch into that safety mode, into whatever our brain is telling us to do. And then when that danger is gone, hopefully we go back to baseline. But a lot of the times with our kids, especially kids who have experienced any kind of trauma or they might have some neurodivergency, that turning that alarm system off is really difficult for them. And their brain symptoms kind of like hold on a little bit longer than it should. So in terms of conscious discipline things, when we are in our survival state, we are seeking safety. All that matters in that moment is, are we safe? And I am going to do anything that I can to ensure that I am safe in that moment. And that can be a really kind of scary time for kids. So a lot of the times, the behaviors we see when we're stuck in our brainstem is hiding, fighting, surrendering. That's where that physical aggression kind of kicks in if we're scared. Um, and uh, and our question that we're trying to answer is, are we safe? And in order to move into the higher states of the brain, we have to answer yes to that question. So that is the very first thing we work on when it comes to our littles, is making sure that they feel safe and connected, because those are going to help them get to those higher brain states. Um, a lot of those, like I said, those behaviors that we'll see when someone's in their survival state is that physical aggression, tantrums, withdrawal, all of those things. But if we can answer yes to our question, am I safe? Then hopefully we move up into our emotional state, which is our limbic system. That's that blue section of the brain. That has a lot of different structures. It has the amygdala, the hippocampus. There's a couple other things in there. And it processes our emotions. It activates memories, and it tells us what's worth remembering. So it takes our past experiences and it tells us what's worth remembering. So this is really important when it comes to how our kids react to certain feelings. So for example, frustration. If we have, when we're developing these things in our brain, if we have a grown up that when they are frustrated, they yell at others, or they look for someone to blame during that time, that script can get coded into our emotional state, into our limbic system. Um, and so that's important to remember when we are reacting to to our own frustrations, is what is it that we are kind of programming into our kids. And that's a really scary thing for a lot of people, including myself, is how are we coding their own kind of personal messages. In conscious discipline, they call it a CD-ROM. So like how are we coding that CD-ROM? Are we coding them with false program messages or with true ones? So our false messages might be things that are not helpful. That like the yelling and the screaming and that kind of things, those are not helpful for our frustration, but they are things that are coded. And so it's important that we do the work first, so that we are modeling and helping to kind of script what they can do also. And we'll talk much more about that in a minute. But again, we must answer yes to the question, am I loved or connected, when we are in this state, to move up into our higher brain state. So we're looking for love, we're looking for connection to our caretakers, and our safe people, before we can move on to the higher parts of our brain. So that requires us to have a secure attachment to our Caretakers, we need to be seen and soothed and feel safe. So the behaviors we might see if that's not happening are attention seeking, although I like to call it connection seeking, just so I remember that it's not necessarily attention that they're looking for, but they need that connection. Relationship resistance can happen if we're not able to answer yes to that question, and then clinginess or perfectionism can be really hard for our kids if we can't answer that we are safe or that we're loved and connected. Again, if I'm going fast or you have questions, stop me. I love all of it. I will talk about anything you want to. um, our last one, which is the best part for this particular thing, but also has the worst news to it. So our executive state is our prefrontal lobe. So that's the front of our brain here. The bad news is that this part of our brain does not fully develop until we are at least 25, which is a very long time for our kids and even some young adults. And so the big piece of this is that we can't expect them to just have these skills and to get them for themselves and to really
Hey,
hone
let's
in
go
on them.
upstairs.
But we have to lend them our executive state until they can develop some
Hey,
of those
water van,
habits
let's
for
go.
themselves. Um, in this prefrontal lobe, we have our executive functioning, so we can see others' points of view, we can manage emotions, and we can access problem-solving skills. We're kind of, when we can access that, we are in a state of relaxed alertness. So we can notice our thoughts, we notice our emotions, we're conscious of our actions, and we have the ability to pause and plan a wise response. So you can see why that is an important part of our brain and why it's a real bummer that our kids don't get it fully on board until they're 25. Um, I wish they did, but they don't. So we're going to loan them ours until they're ready. And we're going to change our thinking from what will make them do this to what will help them be successful at this. So we're not necessarily thinking how we can make them do it, but how we can help them be successful. So that was a lot of information about the brain, but I promise that it's needed for this. All right. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about us again. We're going to keep talking about the grown-ups a lot today, even though you're here for the kids, but that's how we do it. So the biggest threat to a child's sense of safety is an out-of-control adult. The key to safety is a conscious, mindful adult. So that's what we're going to focus on. And with that, we have our 7 powers of conscious adults. And I'm not gonna go over these in great detail right now. I will give you we'll give you the link to the slide deck too, because there's a couple of clicky things, and you can kind of review these. But these are the major powers that we're working on as adults. So those are perception. It's very small on my screen, so I'm going to make it a little bit bigger while I talk to you about it. Perception, attention, unity, free will, acceptance, love, and intention. So those are our powers as conscious adults. You can see they each have a different big idea, they have a different goal, and there's a few that we're going to touch on this evening, but I will let you peruse those at your own pace at another time. But just something to keep in mind. So next, we're going to talk about some family routines and expectations, because I know that was a big ask on our Google form that you filled out. And again, here we go with another conscious discipline quote. Take a moment to think about where you have chaos in your day. This indicates where you need to create a routine and break it down visually. I know a lot of us create a routine and we just know what to do, and we want our kids to know what to do, and we think they should know what to do because we do it every day, but we don't have any pictures to go with it, and we haven't really taught it. We just kind of expect them to do it because we do it every day. That is only asking for you to get frustrated. um, like I said, I spent 12 years teaching special ed preschool, so I have made every visual you can possibly think of, but I've also made a lot of visuals for my house. So this isn't just something that we do at school. Milo required a lot of visuals to learn different routines and expectations. Um, and it's just something that we have to do, and it can feel really tedious, and we have to teach it over and over and over again. But I promise you, this is the biggest way that you are going to see some results in sticky parts of your day, is adding visual representation in a way that they can understand. And I know that we have kind of a wide range of family ages here. So the kids, I know anywhere from preschool up to maybe fifth grade-ish. And I am telling you right now, I use visuals with all of my students, including fifth graders. I might make it a little bit more like written language when they get a little bit older, but I also know that I have fifth graders who are not very strong readers yet. And so they need those visual reminders too. Also, when we are in our lower parts of our brain, it's harder for us to process written information. It's much easier for us to process picture representation or visual information than it is written information. And so, if we're looking for ways to help our kids, um, if we're looking for a way to help our kids kind of like get out of those high emotion needs at that time, we need to give them pictures um, to help to remind them of what's appropriate at that time. Could you give an example of what you do? Do you mean, I saw from Lacey, do you mean like on a daily basis or just with like picture representation? I might need more information from you on that question. And I'm going to keep going for a minute. And if you could, oh, with the pictures. Yeah. I'm going to show you all the things. So we're going to go through with some visuals. This next part is really heavy on the visuals. And if I don't answer a question for you, then I can address it as we go too. So this is where I'm going to show you a resource. So Conscious Discipline has a really great website with lots of tools. I think you do have to sign up for a free account, but it's a free account. And then you get access to this really cool thing called Schubert's Home. Schubert is this character. He's a lightning bug. He lives in Bug Valley with all of his bug friends. And there's a whole series of books that I use with every grade level on teaching different skills. But Schubert's Home is a really great resource where you can click around to see the different places that they might have visual expectations, or the places they might have visual routines, or where they're going to have their safekeeper commitment, which we're going to talk about in a minute, or where they have their family meetings. It's just a really cool, it's a really great resource. And when you get the access to this slide deck, there is a clicky link in the upper right-hand corner there, so you can check it out yourself too. But I'm going to kind of refer back to that a few times also. It is very fun and I like it. There's also a classroom version if you're looking for a little deeper, but the home one is really helpful. All right, so first kind of routine and ritual that we're going to talk about is our safekeeper ritual. So this is something that I teach kids from preschool all the way up to fifth graders. I teach it at home and I teach it at school. And this is our number one thing that we are focused on, no matter what else is happening. But our safekeeper ritual is that as the adult, it is my job to keep you safe. And as the child, it is your job to help me keep it safe. So no matter what is happening, I can go back to that, like, what is my first job? Like, yes, you are scared right now. Yes, you are frustrated right now. Yes, you are like throwing punches, all of that stuff. But what is my number one job? It is to keep you safe. And then every time I say that, I say, what is your job? And no matter what child I'm talking to at this point, because we also have it in our morning announcements at school, no matter what kiddo I'm talking to, they can almost always respond with, it's my job to help keep it safe. And then we kind of reflect, are we doing that right now? Does that seem like something, are we helping keep it safe? What can we change to make sure that we're following that commitment? Um, we talk a lot about commitment because we refer to ourselves at school as a school family. Obviously, we are a family at home also. And in a family, if we can help, we do help, and we help keep each other safe. So a safekeeper ritual can look a lot of different ways. You can just use a kind of a verbal reminder to kids. I've never used like a physical representation at home. But if I asked Milo what my job was, he'd be able to tell you. And if I asked him what his job was, he'd be able to tell you too, because we talk about it a lot. But some people really like to have a safekeeper box. So in the morning, as part of like maybe just a quick family meeting or just a quick commitment thing, you might have a box and you might have like pictures of each person in the family, or you can see on one of these pictures, they have like a little toy that represents each person. And it's their reminder of what their job is in that safe ritual, to keep it safe, or to help keep it safe and to keep them safe. And they can just put it in there every morning and just remind themselves what that safekeeper ritual is. And kind of just a place that we can remind kids when they're scared that, like, look, you're in the safekeeper box. That means I'm doing my job, and that means you're doing your job. What is the it that the child keeping it safe? Kind of the whole situation. So it means they're keeping themselves safe. They're keeping the people around them safe. We don't want to limit it to just like, it's my job to keep you safe, and it's your job to keep you safe, because we want them to also keep each other safe. So we're using safe hands and safe bodies with other people. We're using safe words. We're not making people feel like we're going to hurt them. Or maybe we are interacting safely with the things in our environment. So furniture, materials, all of those things we're helping keep safe. I hope that answers your question a little bit. I love the safekeeper ritual. It's probably one of my favorite things in conscious discipline. Um, I think that looking back at the brain, our first question is, am I safe? And I can't move into my higher brain states if I don't answer yes to that question. And by doing a safekeeper ritual and making sure that that kiddo knows it is my first job to keep you safe, and it is your first job to help me keep it safe, then that way we can start to answer yes to that question to move up into our higher brain states. Um, just for a minute, any other questions on the safekeeper ritual? You can either unmute or you can put it in the chat, or I'll give you a minute and we'll move forward. All right, we're going to keep going. And if there's something else, just pop it in that chat. Because I think, oh,
Will,
go ahead. Is there someone who'd like, has a
yeah,
question?
Will has his hand up.
Okay.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I didn't want to jump in until you had gotten to all of your brief, but I wanted to my where my mind is at in all of this, and I've got two boys. They're both 5.5 years apart,
Mm-hmm.
3.5 and 9, or 4 going on. Anyhow, I know that you can keep them safe and discipline them at the same time, and
Absolutely.
I'm eager to hear like your approach to that.
Yeah, we're going to do that too. So we have to, and I appreciate you bringing that up, because I know it seems like we focus a lot on, it seems like we're going to focus a lot on kind of setting those expectations for a little while. But really, until we get them into a place where they feel safe and they know what's expected and they know what's coming, they can predict things, then we can get to that consequence piece without kind of doing those unhelpful pre-coded messages, or like kind of giving them those unhelpful phrases. So we want to make sure we take care of all parts of the brain, and their safety first. So I appreciate bringing that up, and hopefully we meet that expectation. So we're going to keep going. So next we have, this one's just called All the Visuals. This is a snapshot of the toddler room from Schubert's home. And it's just a snapshot. We're going to go over a lot of these. But you can see this is excessive. There's a lot of them. And you're going to want to pick and choose what works for you and your family. But this is kind of an example of all the visuals you could have that would be helpful. So they have pictures of different routines. You can see kind of above the bed, it's the morning routine and the evening routine. They have a safe place, which we're going to talk about too, is just a place that you can go to when you're feeling big feelings and you need some calming time. But they have visuals for that with a feelings board, and different breathing techniques. And they have the breathing techniques on the other side by the toys also. They also have pictures of how things should look when it's cleaned up. And that's one of my favorite things, and I'm going to show you that in a minute too, is we tell kids to clean up all the time. And then half the time they don't do it the way we want them to. And so then we respond by saying, I told you to clean up. And they say, but I did clean up. But it doesn't look the way we want it to. And so let's give them that tool before we have to kind of give them a consequence, even if they aren't sure what they're supposed to be doing. So like I said, this is kind of a big, there's a lot of visuals in that picture, but we're going to go over them kind of individually. So we're going to start with routines and jobs. I put in there, you can use for any of these visuals. I use at school, I use a program called Lesson Picks, but I've also used Google Clip Art, and I've used real pictures are always great for our younger kids so that they can see themselves doing it. If you can kind of make a game of it and practice whatever routine it is, and take pictures of them doing it, that's really impactful and meaningful for them. As they get a little bit older, they might not need that like photo, and they can handle like the clip art. So the time to go to school and the time to get ready for dinner are both ones that I made for Milo at home because he needed that kind of like breakdown of the task. We call that a task analysis or a routine. And he needed to know kind of the steps so that it was kind of a double bonus here. He gets to see what the routine is, and mom doesn't get really frustrated saying you need to get your backpack 15 times, because I can kind of just refer him back to the visual. And like I said, that visual processing is going to kick in faster than his auditory processing. And if you have children, which all of you do, you know that the auditory processing is not always awesome. But they need that visual also. So there's lots of different ways you can do this. Milo's was just a simple step by step. Here's the things that are happening. You can have ones like the Gabriella's bedtime routine where like they're checking off each thing if they need that kind of like I'm done with this thing, like symbolism. There's ones where you can create it so that they flip up and down so that when they're done with it, they flip it up. So it's gone. They don't even see it anymore. I'm done with that part. My favorite is that red and green one on the left there. It's called a do done chart. And so it has our to-do list. And then when we are done, we move it over so that we can see what we've already done and we can see what we have left to do. These you could, this is where you're going to want to look at like, where is there chaos in your day? Where are your sticky spots? Or where do you feel like you are resorting back to maybe your emotional state, because you are having to give a direction 100 times. And kind of thinking back to our brain science here, the kiddo that we are interacting with can't be in a higher brain state than we are. So if we are in our emotional state, they are either going to be in their emotional state or their survival state. And those are not things that we need for them. If we are in our executive functioning and we are in our like prefrontal lobe there, we can lend them ours and they can be in those higher brain states also, which is frustrating because we want them to just do it all the time, but we have to do it first. So like I said, this is something that you can really personalize to what works for you and your family. Maybe this is a routine that everyone helps with. So you have like different parts that you might have different things above the different tasks for different people. You can also create just a job chart. Milo and Charlie both have a job chart on the refrigerator that I put on with Velcro so that one of them doesn't complain about feeding the dog forever and ever, but we switch it every week. So Charlie feeds the dog one week and Milo does it the next week and I can move it around. But that can be helpful too, just so they're not, they know what to do when I say, go look at your jobs. And like before dinner, we say, okay, time to do your job and then get ready for dinner. So that they are just kind of, they know where to go. They can see it. I don't have to be giving them 15,000 verbal reminders. Hopefully, not all the time. That never happens. But hopefully they can kind of move on with their visual cues that they have and complete their jobs to the best of their ability or complete a routine to the best of their ability. These things can be like as small as you need them to be or as big. So getting ready for dinner is kind of in the medium there. So it goes all the way from him cleaning up his toys to taking plates to the table. And that can span like maybe 10 minutes, which can be a long time for our littles. But for, a fourth or fifth grader, like that is perfectly reasonable. But you could shorten that way down, or you could say, hey, here's our schedule for the day. And we're doing it on a do done. So here's our schedule for the day. When we are finished with that thing, we're going to move it over to done. And then here's what we have left. So like I said, you can kind of really personalize that to what you need it to be, and what your family needs it to be. Any questions on routines and jobs? We're going to talk more visuals, don't worry. But any questions on kind of how to personalize that or how you can create those yourself? Velcro is your best friend if you want to make them movable. I also have a little laminator that I love to use so that if they do get, every once in a while, Milo gets mad and he doesn't want to clean up for dinner. And so he wants to take that and kind of like throw it or rip it or whatever, but it's laminated, so it's harder to do. But that's okay. Because visuals, no matter what, they're still there. That's also what I like. The auditory can kind of go in one ear, out the other, as I'm sure all of you are familiar with. But our visuals are always right there, and they can go back to them over and over again. All right, we're gonna keep on keeping on. So expectations. This is another big one for in our households. We want our kiddos to know what's expected, so that we can praise them when they are doing what's expected, and we can help guide them when they are not. Um, so again, we're not looking necessarily to punish them right now. We're looking at, do they have the skill, or do they know what's expected, and how can I help them be successful in that? So that's something we're going to keep reminding ourselves over and over again. I'm not looking at how I can make them do it. I want to know how I can help them be successful. So again, pictures, clip art, simple words, actual photos, always really good. What I love about a couple of these visuals is they took pictures of exactly what they want it to look like when they are cleaned up. So you can see the dollhouse on the side there. The dollhouse is empty, everything's put away. That's how it should look when we're done cleaning up. So that if we say to clean up, we go, okay, let's go check the dollhouse. Does your dollhouse look like this picture? Yes, awesome, you did it. If not, oops, we should try again. Let's try this, this, and this. So we can kind of compare it back to that. Or, if you have a play kitchen, that always is a mess. But in my house, it's always a mess. But if you can get it to, with your kiddo, if you can kind of organize it the way you know is reasonable and that they can do, and then snap a picture of it and just kind of stick it on there so that you can go back and say, does your kitchen look like this? You did? Awesome. You did it. Way to go. If not, we need to fix this, and that's fine. We'll do it together. Or go back and try again, that kind of thing. The other one on here, you'll see this was one I made for a kiddo at school who, when someone gets too close to him, he tends to hit or kick or punch instead of using words or moving away himself. So what we're doing here is we know that the problem is that someone is too close. So here's two things I can do and one thing that I can't do. When I was teaching special ed, I was never a big proponent of showing them what they can't do, because that usually looks like the most fun. And occasionally I would get a kiddo that if I showed them what they were not supposed to do, that's exactly what they were going to do. And so if you have a kiddo like that, don't put that one on there, but instead just give them the options of what is appropriate for that time. Could also look like if you've got stairs in your house and you have a problem with kiddos running up and down the stairs and you know that's not safe. This might look like, like using the stairs. And then your option is going to be like, I can walk up the stairs by myself. I can walk up the stairs using the handrail, but I may not run up the stairs. And like I said, if you do have a kiddo that is going to latch on to that thing they can't do and they're going to do it every time, don't put that on there and don't even address it. Just if they are running up the stairs, you're saying, oh, let's look at our expectation. If we're using the stairs, we can walk or we can use the handrail. Which one are you going to do? Which do you choose? Stream of consciousness for Stacy. So as you are giving those choices, we often as parents, sometimes we give a choice of something to do. Like you can either walk on the stairs or you can go sit in your room, right? So we're kind of making those little threats. I don't really want them to go sit in their room because we have to leave the house in 2 minutes. And so that's not really a choice I want them to make. But if I gave them the choice, they can make that choice. And then if they do make that choice, I'd say, well, actually, you're not going to do that. And then that's not helping me in any way. So if you are giving choices to your kiddos, make sure you are okay with them choosing either of them. Or if you are asking a question, always be okay with the answer, or don't ask the question. Just that's a side note. But this is two ways you can do expectations. We're also going to look at commitments in a minute. That kind of sets the tone for expectations. Also, it's a little more kind of like overall. These expectations might be more for like specific scenarios or specific areas of the home. Any big questions on expectations and kind of how to plug in visuals for that one? Cool. Stop me if something pops up. All right, let's talk about commitments. So commitments really are something that we are committing to as a family. That it's just what it sounds like. There's nothing fancy about it. We're just committing to these things. Making a commitment activates our prefrontal cortex. It increases the likelihood of success. It produces serotonin, which is one of those good chemicals in our body, and promotes mindful attention. So we are focusing on what we want more of. Our commitments are always going to be written in the positive. So this is what we want to see. We're not going to write things like we don't do this or we're not going to do this. We're going to talk about what we want to see in our commitments. Your safekeeper ritual is a commitment. And that can absolutely, if you can't do anything else, if this feels overwhelming and you can't do other commitments in your family, your safekeeper ritual is absolutely a commitment because you are committing to keeping them safe and they are committing to helping you keep it safe. And that's a really beautiful thing. And sometimes that's all we need to kind of get over that hump of whatever's kind of stopping us from being successful. But if you're ready to add some more of those, there's lots of different things you can do. You can have like a family meeting to kind of decide what your family values, what's important to you, what you want to see more of. Do we want to make sure we are using gentle touches? Do we want to make sure we're helping when we can? Do we want to increase like safe behaviors at home? So making sure that we are using our body safely, or we're using materials safely. Those are all things that can be family commitments. You can do them in lots of different ways. You can write them like on Post-it notes or pictures or something, and you can put them up where you're going to see them. So you can put them on doors, you can put them on mirrors in the bathroom, anywhere that you're going to get those little bumps of reminder throughout the day. Like, oh yeah, this is what I'm working on today, and this is what I want to see some more of. And like I said, this is for you as much as it is for your kids. Maybe you need a commitment to stop and breathe before you interact with your kiddo during an upset. Maybe you want to commit to making sure you are in a higher brain state before moving in to interact with a kiddo with upset. So this can be something for you too. It's not just for our kids, this is for us. There is another link on here for a family meeting if you're really looking to push that, and like full on family meeting where you do some brain smart start stuff to activate those all those parts of the brain. It's a lot of information, so I'm not going to go real deep into it now, but there is a link to that kind of like starting guide on conscious discipline. Your commitments, they can change on a daily or weekly basis, or they can be like long-standing commitments. So often in our house, and then at school, we have a few more at school, but at our house, our commitments are to be safe and kind and responsible. And those can kind of cover most things that we are doing. And so those are our long-standing commitments, but we might have like little ones in between that we need to focus on specifically. But you're just to create a commitment, you're just going to decide what your family values, what you want to see more of, or what you want to improve on. Maybe it's taking turns with a sibling. Maybe it's making sure we wake up on time. It can be any of those things. And then you want to do some check-in. So you can see that commitment check-in. Did we do it? Or do we need some more time to practice? So we're not focusing on like, I did it wrong or I can't do it. But it's just like, yay, I did it. Or oops, like I need to practice some more. No big deal. We're just going to practice. It's all good. And again, these can be photos, they can be drawings with like simple word labels. They can just be words for our older kids and our grown-ups. But again, you can really personalize these. The picture in the middle there is actually from a classroom, but you could do this at home too. They have their 4 commitments. Those circles are their 4 commitments in the classroom. And then each kiddo has a clothespin with their picture on it. And so they can choose what their commitment is for that day. So if that's something you want to do for your family, that's great too. Clothespins work great for that. You can just kind of put pictures on it or write names on it, and your family can each person can choose what they're focusing on for that day. It's a really nice way to do that. Any questions on family commitments? This is just another way for us to set expectations, but also kind of model that we are all in this together. We're doing it all together. Everyone's making a commitment, but these are our expectations in our house too. But by including our kids in that and helping them or having them help us design those, they can take ownership of it too. Because they're like, I thought of safe, and so that's really important to me because I thought of it. That's what our kids do. If they thought of it, it's the most important thing. Any questions on that one? All righty. There we go. All right, we're going to talk about emotional regulation, which I know is a big one for a lot of us. It's like, how do we respond when a kiddo's feeling those big things or when they are upset? Before we move on to that, with the visuals and just kind of setting expectations and routines, is there anything that I didn't cover that you would like some clarification on? All right, then we will move forward. So, our quote for this section is empathy requires us to accept the upset as it is and acknowledge others' thoughts and feelings without the need to change them. That is very difficult for a lot of us. We want them to stop crying sometimes, we want them to stop being angry. Um, but by showing empathy, we're accepting what their feelings are and we're acknowledging their feelings and their thoughts without needing to change them because that's what's happening right now. And we can help them with the upset, but we can't make it stop, which is frustrating for us. But there's ways to help. So let's talk about those ways. The first thing is a safe place. So this can be called lots of different things. It can be a calm down corner. I have a classroom that calls it a Zen zone, which is like my new favorite. In conscious discipline, they call it a safe place. Conscious discipline has lots of fancy tools for it. It does not need to be fancy. Um, what this the core of it is that you have a space that you can go to when you are not feeling calm, whatever that might be, that you have some tools there and you have visual reminders of how to calm yourself so that you can move forward. um, you can see a couple of these have like feeling faces up on the wall, so that you can kind of tell how you're feeling. Maybe you can see conscious discipline does 4 main like calming breaths, that if you're interested, I can absolutely show you because they are fun and kids do love them. And they're just easy, simple things to remember. And so they have visuals of that. Maybe you have, my kids both had glitter bottles. Charlie's safe place was a basket in her room that had a glitter bottle, and I think it was her like white snow leopard that she liked to cuddle with. And then some like breathing cards because I'm a special ed teacher, so I have breathing cards. So she had that. That was her safe place. It wasn't anything super fancy. It was a glitter bottle that we made. It was a stuffed animal she already had. And then she just had some visual reminders on some deep breaths she could take because that's all she needed. Um, Milo's was similar. He still has it. He has a glitter bottle and his fox. He has a little bit more intensive, like how to calm myself visual because he needs more. He needs more than that. He needed more than just a deep breath. He needed to kind of follow a step by step. He needed some like tactile sensory stuff because he's also my sensory seeking kiddo. Um, and so I have different things for him that he might need to calm. And that's going to be something that you're going to have to experiment with. Have them help you design your safe place so that, again, they have ownership of it. You know that there's things that they are like attracted to, you know, that they are going to want to go do or that they're going to want to go there. And the best way to practice this is just by kind of playing with it. So a lot of the times we would come up with different scenarios for like, oh, imagine that you're building a tower with your magnetiles and it falls down and you are so, and I would let him kind of think, he's like, angry. So, yes, you're feeling so angry about it and you just can't hold it inside. Where can we go and what can we do? And so then he can lead me like, oh, we can go to the safe place and we can practice. Here's my glitter bottle. Here's my fox. Here's the things I can do. Here's the deep breaths. But we can play with it so that and practice it over and over again so that when those emotions take over, we can try to remember that a little bit better. So like I said, let them choose what feels best for them because that's going to help the most. If we put in things that we think we would like, that's going to help us and that's great, but it's not going to help them. So, and we as adults have safe places. We have things that we do to calm ourselves. But for our kids, it needs to be external, whereas for us, it is probably mostly internal, although you probably have places that you do go when you need to just calm and be by yourself. So recognizing that we still do that as adults, but our kids need a very specific place to go to, and specific tools to use. So that can be whatever you want it to be. It can be a beanbag. It can be a carpet. It can be a corner of the room with a basket. It can be whatever you need it to be, as long as it makes sense to your kiddo. And again, we use these for every age range. Yes, Milo's 4, but I also have a safe place in the office at school that I have a 5th grader that goes there 3 out of 5 days a week. And he follows all the steps and he does the things, and he's able to get back to class without some big giant explosions, because we practiced a lot for him to go there when he's feeling upset. It's not always pretty, but it's where he goes. So stop me if you have any questions on the safe place. Otherwise, we're going to keep going because I think that we are running out of time and I have lots of things. This is my favorite thing. I won't spend too much time on it. I have this up in every classroom I've ever taught in. It's up in my office now, and I try to keep it in mind with my own kids. So the idea of it is that we move up in consciousness before we move in with action. We are going to make a be choice before we make a do choice. So how am I going to be? Am I going to be calm? Am I going to be frustrated before I go and do something about it? So I'm going to make a be choice before I make a do choice. I'm going to talk to myself before I talk to the child. I might take a deep breath. I might remind myself that I am safe, and that I can do this, and and kind of give myself a little pep talk before I step in. My favorite part of this is this next one is see it all as perfect. No matter what is happening at this time, perfect. If they are following the expectations and they are going along with routines and they're doing all these things and we're having fun, perfect. They know what to do. I know what to do. We're having a great time. If they are not following the expectation or the routine, perfect. Now I know what I need to help them with in order to be successful. So I am going to see it as perfect no matter what is happening. It's a very difficult skill to get to. I still don't do it well all the time, but it is a nice reminder for me. What is whatever is happening is what is happening. So we are going to address it in the way that we need to. And to make no assumptions. I'm not going to assume what made them angry, because sometimes when I say, if I say, oh, you're angry because this happened, then that just gets them to scream at me louder that that's not what happened and they're not feeling angry. So I'm not going to make an assumption. I'm going to go in with curiosity, and see if we can figure it out together. So this is one of my favorite things. I love to hang it up anywhere I go, just for reminders for myself. Very quickly, positive intent is just something where we use in conscious discipline. They use the symbol of the heart glasses. When I'm doing this with kids, we just use heart hands. But we're just going to see the best in whatever's happening, or in whomever we are helping. So quickly, we have a couple of things here. So this is our power of love. It is seeing the best in others, and knowing that if they are doing something that is not expected, it is possibly because they don't know how. It's not that they're trying to be mean, that they're trying to be disrespectful, but they might just not know how to do it. So our goal as an adult is to accept the moment as it is and move forward that way. Our kiddos, we want them to learn how to offer, hold on, I gotta make this a little bit bigger again so I can see it. We're going to learn how to offer developmentally appropriate empathy towards themselves and others. So we don't want them beating themselves up because they don't know what to do. We want them to recognize, like, hey, I don't know what to do, and that's okay. So I'm going to see the best in that. Ooh, I went too far. No, I didn't. The best way to kind of do this is with the acronym ACT. Conscious discipline is very heavy on the acronyms. I don't love them all. This one's cool. So when we are responding to upset, so something has happened and our kiddo is upset, they're frustrated, they're sad, they're angry, any of those things, we are going to use our positive intent. So seeing the best in the situation, seeing the best in others. They are not trying to be difficult. They are not trying to make mom lose her mind. They just don't know what to do. So I'm going to use my positive intent to see the missing skill behind the hurt, or the hurtful actions, and then use ACT to teach the skill. So it's a pretty simple script that can work with most situations, most ages, all of those things. First, we're going to just acknowledge the child's desire. So let's use an example of Milo wanted the green marker that Charlie was using, and he's really upset because he can't have the green marker that Charlie's using. So and he's like throwing himself on the floor, which he does often. And we're going to respond. We're going to make sure that we are in the right space. We're going to take a breath. and remind ourselves that we are capable and we can do this, and we're going to step in. And first, we're going to acknowledge the child's desire. Milo, I can see you really wanted that green marker. That I can tell. You really wanted that green marker. Then I'm going to clarify the skill that they can use next time. So when you want the green marker, you can ask Charlie, can I use the green marker, please? And then we're going to practice it together. So we're going to take time to practice. All right, you try it. What can we say? I'm going to say it first. Charlie, can I borrow the green marker, please? Okay, Milo, your turn. You say it. So we're going to practice those things. Sometimes you have to wait till they come down a little bit from their upset to practice those things. But a lot of the times we can kind of get them there by using some noticing language. My favorite thing is like if you've got everyone's got the kid who sits here like this and they just like are in their feelings and they don't know what to do. And so I'm going to go up to that kid and be like, oh, your face is going like this and your arms are like this. And I'm not going to say what they look like. I'm just going to say like this, because usually that gets that kid to look up at me and at least I've got some eye contact. So I know that they're kind of starting to notice that I'm there. And then we can start to be like, oh, you really wanted that green marker. I can see that. When you want that green marker, you can ask Charlie, can I use the green marker, please? Let's practice it. So it's a quick, easy thing to do to respond to that upset. And just kind of a nice script to have. How do you respond if the other friend won't share the marker? Yeah, that's a thing that happens a lot. So just like with us, when we ask a kid a question, I have to be okay with the answer. I know that as an adult. Our kids don't always know that. There are lots of times where they ask, can I have a turn? Can I join the game? Can I do this? And that friend is going to say no. There are lots of times as an adult that I ask for something and someone tells me no. So I am going to kind of respond the way I would. I'm not going to force the other kid to give a marker. If Milo asks Charlie for a marker and she says, well, I'm using it right now. Then I can say, okay, well, let's ask Charlie, like two things you can do. We can ask Charlie if when she's done, if we can use it, or we can find a different color to use. So I'm going to kind of guide them to those choices. Or if it's something where I'm like, I know that this, if like they want to join a game. So you wanted to join a game. When you want to join a game, you can go and ask. Let's practice it. They ask if they can join the game. The other children say no. That's going to be a teaching moment for both of them, how to respond to no, but also for that other group of kids, what can we do to be helpful, not hurtful? So what's helpful for us right now? Is it um, that we let our friends play? Is that helpful or hurtful? When we tell someone they can't play, is that helpful or hurtful? So it takes time and you have to stop and do a lot of teaching. But there's two things to teach there. It's one, being inclusive and helpful, and maybe going back to your family commitments. Maybe one of your commitments is to take turns, or one of your commitments is just to be kind. And so you can go back to that. If you've got these things kind of set up ahead of time, you can respond those things with a little bit more ease, knowing that they already have some of that language in their head. What do you do when you're throwing a big fit and can't or won't hear the accepts? We wait. Usually we wait. Or I'm going to try a lot of things for like a redirection or a distraction. Sometimes that just noticing language of like your face is doing this, your arms are doing this. And again, I'm not saying like your arms are pounding on the ground. I'm saying your arms are doing this, so that they kind of have to look at me to see what I'm doing. Your kiddos the best. I know with Milo, when he has a big upset, that he sometimes, if I can go up to him and just kind of hold him and help him like kind of breathe again. So I usually tell him, breathe with me, and we just breathe together. Sometimes I need to let him be, and he needs to do that for a minute until like I can start to get his attention again. And usually I go back to a voice kind of like this, and I just sit there and I start to breathe, and I might say his name a few times. But usually if he's really, really upset and I can't get to him, or he isn't hearing what I'm saying, I'll just kind of sit there. And I'll kind of Milo, and I'll wait for him to kind of notice that, because my energy is going to affect his energy. And my response is going to affect his response. So a lot of it is figuring out what works for your kids. Do they need that tactile sensation? Do they need touch? Do they need connection that way? Do they need someone to just be there with you, with them? Do they need space? Which I know is hard, especially when we are not, maybe you're not in the comfort of your home and you don't have time to wait. And sometimes we do have to move them physically when they are doing that because they're not in a place that's safe. And I have many times moved Milo out of a situation or out of a space so that he can be safe and still handle his upset, or I can help him handle his upset. So that next question I see, how do you handle a tantrum when you're outside? If you're out in your backyard, cool. If you are, that's a tough one. So if you are like out in public, how you handle that is very much going to depend on how you've set it up before. Did you guys talk about expectations? Did you set up visuals for maybe you know that going to this store at, like right before nap time is a problem. And so that's when you're going to want to set up those routines and those expectations. Maybe you make a game out of it, like you're looking for different things that are red, and you're seeing who can find the most things that are circles, and you're doing all those things. You've set all those things up. Hopefully that's going to help a lot with a tantrum. The hardest part of a tantrum is that relying on like kind of basic old school behavior management, you're not going to want to give into it, because if you do, they're going to know that's exactly what they need to do to get that thing again, or whatever outcome they want. And so as hard as it's going to be, you're going to want to hold strong as much as you can. And then once you're out of that and you are back into your executive functioning, because you probably went back into your either limbic system, your emotional state, or your survival state. Once you're back and everybody's okay and safe and you are back in your prefrontal cortex, you can go back and think, that was chaotic. That did not go well. What can I do to help them be successful? And I know that that's really vague and not a great answer, but it's the realistic one, because there's no magic for a tantrum outside. It's just, I wish that there was, but there's not. So it's how you set it up before. It's knowing your kid, knowing what you need to do when you're outside, and then making sure that they are familiar with some of those calming things too. So like taking deep breaths, or counting to 5, or Milo really likes like head squeezes and hand squeezes. So if he's really upset, I can usually grab his hands and just kind of squeeze and breathe. So he's ready to go too, and I am not in my survival state anymore. So I know that's vague, but I hope that helps a little bit. Alrighty. The very last thing, I did pull a couple of the scenarios that you all put in the Google form, which I appreciate. That was really, very helpful. And maybe I can give a couple of extra things that might be helpful. And I know I think we're a little past time, but Amy, if it's okay, I'm going to keep going. I can't see you right now, so hopefully that's
Yes,
okay.
it's okay with me.
Okay.
And if people need to drop off, I totally understand. And we're recording it.
Yes.
You can stay if you want to stay. That's great.
Cool. So I put on here one of the main breaths. So there's 4 main breaths that conscious discipline teaches, and the main one is STAR, which stands for smile. I don't love that. I usually use stop instead, but we're going to say smile. Smile, take a deep breath, and relax. I often in my job use stop instead of smile, because there are kids that just, they are not ready to smile when they are feeling upset, and that is okay. So we call STAR, we do stop, take a deep breath, and relax. Real quick, I'll tell you what the other 3 are, because the kids like them so much that they might be very helpful, because they're silly, or some of them are silly, and so it kind of helps snap them back out of whatever they're doing too. So one of them is a pretzel breath. So all you're gonna do is teach them to kind of like, here, I gotta push my computer farther away. You're gonna teach them to do the like clap and miss, turn and hold their hands, and then like this. Or if you've got really littles that can't do that, they can just kind of cross their arms. But what we're trying to do is kind of connect both sides of the brain. So anyway, your pretzel breath is like this. You can sit crisscross, they can cross their legs, or just sit comfortably. And we're just gonna we're gonna kind of tense those muscles up, and we're gonna take a big breath in our nose. and relax. And then as we relax, we're just kind of relax our muscles. So that's a pretzel breath, always a good time. And then the drain breath is also, it's like a water faucet. So we're going to hold our hands out like this. We are going to squeeze our hands as tight as we can. We're going to squinch up our shoulders here and make our face really tight. So we're tensing all of these muscles, and then we're taking a big breath in, and then we're letting all that tension drain out of our hands. So that's our drain breath. And then this is the crowd favorite. So this is the balloon breath. This can be done different ways depending on your preference. But our balloon breath is we pretend like we have a balloon between our hands and our head. And as we breathe in, it's blowing up our balloon. So as we breathe in, we're going to do this as big as we possibly can. And then you have two options for letting it out. You can just deflate your balloon, or you can do the super fun balloon sound when you let out your air in your balloon, and you can go. And the best part of that is you can't make that sound if your face is tensed up. You have to relax it. And so sometimes the kids, that gets them kind of relaxed because they like to make that sound. They like to deflate their balloon. And so they have to relax those face muscles a little bit. So quick sidebar. Those are the 4 conscious discipline breaths that are really fun, and I like them. And they're very simple, but you can use them almost anywhere. Okay, scenario number 1. And these are anonymous. You guys, if the person who submitted it has more questions and wants to announce themselves, you are welcome to. But in this one, when a child has a big reaction, so screaming, throwing objects, destructive behavior, to a small problem, like trouble with a tape dispenser, you're describing Milo, how to address in the moment the behavior and help child recognize their own feelings, frustration versus angry, mad, or explosive. This is another situation where practicing ahead of time is a big thing. If you have a safe place, or you have a routine for what, like you practice that routine for what to do when you're starting to feel upset, that's going to be really, really helpful because you'll be able to rely back on those. For Milo, maybe it was for Charlie. For Charlie, I made her a wheel at one point, and in the middle is a like a picture of a clip art of a kid, like who's mad or frustrated, scrunchy face, all those things. And it says, when I'm upset, I can. And then she has options around the wheel. And they're on Velcro, so I could switch them out. They could be static, they could just stay there. But she had options to go to her safe place with her glitter bottle. She could take a deep breath. She could ask for help, or ask for a hug, any of those things that might work for her. And if we've practiced those enough time, when there is a small problem that we have a big reaction to, we can kind of bring out that choice wheel that, like, oh, you seem upset. You wanted the tape dispenser to work. When you're feeling frustrated by that, here's some things we can do. And then we can figure out the tape dispenser. So having those things that you've practiced, because again, we can't teach something new when our kids are in that survival state, not even really when they're in emotional state. They're not ready to learn. So they have to be things that we have practiced and practiced and practiced so that they're a little more automatic. They know what those pictures mean, and they know how to use them, and they know how to use the tools. So practicing those things ahead of time is going to be very helpful. Social stories are also really helpful. And if you're not familiar with a social story, it's just kind of a visual walkthrough of a situation. You typically write them. And when I say write them, I mean, like, you could literally write and draw on a piece of paper to do this. Or when Milo was starting at Harbor Montessori and he was very nervous for a new school, I took pictures and on a Word document, just typed it out, made him a little social story. We always write it in the first person because the idea is that kid is the character in the story. So for this one, we might say, this is my social story about being frustrated. Sometimes I get frustrated when something doesn't go my way, right? Because tape dispenser, maybe someone said no, something else didn't go their way. Sometimes I get frustrated when something doesn't go my way. And I'm gonna have a picture of either that kiddo when they making a silly, frustrated face because I want them to be a part of it, or I'm gonna pull some clip art off the internet, which is also totally legit. And then on the next page, we're gonna have, when I'm frustrated, I have some choices I can make. I can ask for help. I can take a deep breath. I can walk away. And anything those are your choices there. And then maybe on the next page it says, when I can calm my body, I can think about how to solve my problem. Or when I calm my body, I can ask for help and mom or dad can help me solve my problem. So I'm writing that social story. It's a social story. If I know that frustration is a big thing for my kid, I'm going to read that social story often when they are calm. Maybe it's part of bedtime stories. Milo still picks out the like first day of school social story from a year and a half ago, just because he likes it. And you can read that during part of your bedtime so that then when you have those situations that happen, you have language to use. That like, oh, you seem frustrated because that didn't work. Let's make our choice. We can breathe or you can ask for help. And sometimes they just need those two choices: breathe or ask for help. And then they can do one of those things, or maybe you help them do those things and you're sitting there and breathing with them. But they already have some of that language in their head because we've read that story. This also might be where you have those visual expectations of the like, you can do this or this, but not this. So when I'm frustrated, I can ask for help. I can take a deep breath, but I cannot throw things across the room. So maybe you have that already kind of ready to go because you know that that's something that happens. We can use our noticing language if we're not able to kind of get their attention, so that like your face looks like this, your arms are like this, and then we can start to say you seem frustrated. You wanted that tape dispenser to work. When you want the tape dispenser to work, you can ask for help. Like, I'm right here to help. We can do that. So what I like about noticing is that in conscious discipline, they say that noticing requires us to be the witness instead of the judge. So we're not judging their behavior. We're just noticing it. And we're doing that, accepting what is. And we are noticing that that's what's happening. And we are here to help when they are ready. But in the meantime, we are going to make sure they are safe because that's our job. So hopefully that helps a little with whomever has that situation. Like, I feel that, like, in my soul, I feel that. um, and if there's other questions, let me know. But we'll kind of go on to the next one. So how to handle resistance to an instruction, like brushing your teeth, putting on clothes, even when offering choices does not produce the desired behavior. You're going to get tired of hearing me say this in the next however long we're together. This requires a lot of setup ahead of time. So looking at where you have chaos during the day, what's not working, because it's okay for something not to work. We just have to then recognize that it's not working. So what isn't working? What do we want to see happen? And how can I help them be successful? Not how can I make them brush their teeth? How can I make them put on their clothes? How can I make them go to bed? But how can I help them be successful? So I'm going to look at visual expectations or routines. Do they know the steps that they need to take? And I don't just mean like, yes, they know the steps. We do it every day. How could they not know it? But do they have a visual representation of it? Because if they have had a day, like we all have, as adults, we have days where we can't get out of our emotional state. We are in our limbic system. We can't get out. It's one of those days. We're anxious. We're sad. The moon is full, whatever it is, we can't get out of our emotional state. And we need extra support and we need extra reminders. And we have reminders for ourselves. We have visuals. We have all these things around us to help us. Our kids need that too, regardless of if we think they know the routine or not. And if that is a sticky part in your day, obviously there is something that needs adjusting. So we're going to make sure we have those visual expectations and routines first. We are going to do the noticing and the praising the positive things that are happening. We're not going to kind of like focus on the bad stuff. We're going to focus on the things we want to see more of. So we're setting the expectation. They've got the routine in a visual form. We are noticing when they are doing what we're asking them to. Oh, you are putting toothbrush on your toothpaste, or your toothpaste on your toothbrush. Way to go. Oh, you started brushing your teeth. That's fantastic. You are putting on your pajama pants first. Love that for you. So my noticing language is just stating what they're doing, that I want them to be doing. And because that's like, oh, I am doing that. Fantastic. Um, we can also utilize something we call a first then board for something like that. Again, it's very simple. It can be something that you draw on a piece of paper. I keep laminated ones so that I can use dry erase marker on them. But at home, if I need it, I literally draw it on a Post-it note. But the idea is that like, if you know that, so Milo and Charlie both, they love book time at bed. They love it. We are a very routine oriented household. They like have bedtimes that we rarely stray from unless Charlie has basketball practice. Um, so I know that book time is a big motivator for those kids. It is for me too. I want to be able to do it. Um, so if I know that Milo's having an especially hard time with brushing his teeth, but it's mostly choices that he's making, like he knows, like we have the visuals of the routine, he knows the expectations. We've put all those things in first. But he's just having a day where like he's just dilly dallying. He doesn't want to do it. I might use a first then to say, okay, first brush your teeth, then we can have 2 books. Or first brush your teeth, then this great thing happens. First put on your clothes, then we get in the car. Whatever it is, I'm going to show them those very 2 things. If he's in a like calm, relaxed state, I can also say like first brush your teeth, then we can have 2 books. But if you dilly dally more, we're not going to have time. We're going to have to just do one. So I can do that if he's calm and collected. If not, I'm not even going to touch that. But a first then can be really helpful when they're just having a hard time kind of like getting past this one thing, but you know that there's something on the other side of it that'll be helpful. Or, like first, this happens a lot too. The kids want you to play with them, but you know that like you have to make dinner. Or no, maybe not make dinner, but maybe you have to finish this thing, whatever that thing is, before you can play with them. So like you have to play by yourself for a little while, which is very hard for Charlie. She's not good at it. She doesn't like it. So I might tell her like, first you color this picture by yourself, and then I will come and color with you. So it's just something simple, and like I can write it out, I can draw it out, whatever she might need for that time. I love a first then board. It's like it's the most versatile tool I have, I think, in my toolbox. All right, let's look at I think one more. All right, so getting out the door in the morning with varying drop-off schedules. Sometimes mom's home, sometimes dad's home, sometimes you carpool. That's a lot of changes for all of us. I wouldn't do well with that. I need a routine. So again, broken record, Stacy says, the visual expectations are going to be your big go-to, especially for each scenario, so that you can like switch them as you need to. Like today, mom is home, so this is our routine. Today we're carpooling, so this is our routine. But just have them so you can switch them out, and then prep for it the night before as much as possible. And that's for everybody. That's not just for your kid, because you probably need it too. I know I would. But like the night before, we can kind of have a mini family meeting, or whomever's involved in the routine in the morning, that like, this is what we're doing. Dad's home tomorrow, so this is our routine. You're, like, this is your job in the morning to do this. This is your job in the morning to do that. And this is how we're going to get out of the door successfully tomorrow. So lots of visuals, lots of prepping ahead of time is really going to help with that. Okay, those are the ones I pulled because I know we're out of time. So this is our last part, and I just want to remind you that so much of this that we've talked about is about us and how we respond to something, and less about the kids and like making them do stuff. So I said that before. We're not making them do things. We're seeing how we can help them be successful. So the power of free will says the only person you can make change is yourself. We can guide them and we can help them be successful, but we cannot force them to do something as much as we would like to. I'm going to go back to one thing that someone asked is like the discipline part. So lots of times, so conscious discipline has a whole chapter called consequences. It's the very last chapter in the book. And the reason for that is that we have all of these tools we can utilize before we get to the point where we're just making the choice. They're not doing it because for whatever reason, there needs to be a consequence. Or like, this was really unsafe and I need to kind of make a point. There is a consequence for that. But again, we kind of refer back to that. First, we want to look at it through our power of intent, our kind of seeing the best in others and seeing if they have those skills first. If they do have the skills, and we see that we have put in all of the tools that they need, and we've seen them be successful multiple times, but there still needs to be a consequence. Those things can happen. And I encourage you to make them related to whatever it is. So like, again, with Milo's brushing teeth scenario, if he does take a long time brushing his teeth or refuses to brush his teeth, and I know he has the skills, and I know he has the visuals, and he has all the things, his consequence is that we don't have time for 2 books. So I'm going to try to make that as natural of an outcome as possible, and not kind of those. I'm not a fan of a timeout, but I do love a break, especially if he's super frustrated or like he's yelling at his sister, because that happens all the time. If he's yelling at his sister and he just can't, we can't get him kind of back down to baseline. Like I will tell him, like, you need a break. Go take a break. Ideally, he takes one without me telling him to. That's not happening yet because he's not ready for that yet. Um, but I will tell him, you are frustrated and you are yelling, and that's hurting my ears. So you're going to go take a break in your room. I will come check on you. And he does respond to that. Some of your kids aren't going to, and you'll know if it's appropriate for you. Like maybe you pick them up and move them to your room and say, I'm going to have you take a break. I'll come back and check on you in a minute. Or you're going to kind of help guide them there themselves. So um, I don't love a timeout because it doesn't do a lot of teaching. A break implies that I want you to calm your body down so we can solve the problem together. But again, that's a teaching thing that's going to happen. So your consequences can be there, and there's nothing that says in conscious discipline that we can't do consequences, but they need to be reasonable and they need to kind of make sense for the behavior. I'm not going to take away. I don't know. So this is a school example, but it's kind of the best one I have. So I don't love to take away recess because kids need recess. The only time I take away recess is if they are being completely unsafe or they are doing something very unsafe on the playground. Then I'm going to take away recess or like um, we're going to do some talking about this during recess time so that you understand what the expectation is. So maybe something like that. If it's just that they were messing around in class, they are going to do their work, but they might do it somewhere else where it's not as fun. So I'm going to kind of keep those in a point where they make sense. I missed a couple things. So would you recommend using visual aids in a family that travels a lot? Always. If you can plan ahead with visuals, always, always, always. It helps. It's that very first quote we had. It's the predictability. Foster it that safety piece. Let me see if I can pull it back up. Yeah. So an atmosphere of uncertainty fostering safety through predictability is especially important. So we want to be able to predict what's happening. We as adults don't feel good if we don't know what's going to happen. It can make our kids really anxious, but it's not going to come out as anxiety. It might come out as anger or frustration or sadness. So using visuals as much as possible, especially if you travel a lot, is going to be helpful because chances are you still have routines on like while you're traveling, or you have ways that you do things. But visuals don't have to be fancy. They can be drawn on a piece of paper, and that's my favorite part of visuals is that they don't have to be fancy. All right, let's see if I can get the last couple. You're welcome. Can you give an example of a difference between timeout and a break? Oh, yeah, I answered. Yeah, cool. Yay, did it. Like I read your mind. Um, like I said, I'm not a big fan of timeouts. I like a break because that implies that I want you to just calm and be ready to talk about the problem. So, all right, I think that's all I have planned for you. I really appreciate you guys letting me do this because, like I said, my favorite thing is to talk about behavior. And kind of problem solve. So um, if there's anybody who has something else they want to problem solve real quick, kind of while others are on their way out, I'm happy to. Um, or if we need a follow up at some point with a kind of second situation, we can do that too. So
Thanks,
with
Stacy.
that, Amy, I think that's it. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time. I think this was so great and so helpful, and hopefully parents feel the same. I think you do. I also want families to know that next week as a staff, we get to work with Stacy on our part of our in-service day, and everyone's really looking forward to that. And again, it's just an opportunity for the school and home to be on the same page using the same language. So we're excited for that. If people want to hang on for, if you have a specific question for Stacy, we can hang out here for a little bit. But otherwise,
Awesome.
thank you. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. I think we did it.
Thank you so much, Stacy. That was amazing.
Yeah, of course.
Super good turnout.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Isn't that exciting? Yeah, I love
Yeah,
it.
that never happens at like our public schools. So I really, it's really exciting. I just hope,
Yeah.
hopefully it was helpful. But like, if you guys get feedback and there's, more stuff that people want to chat about, or if we just want a problem solving session, kind of like we did in Gig Harbor last year, like I'm happy to do any of that stuff. So,
That
That's
sounds
so
great.
great.
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, have a good night, everybody.
all righty, we'll see you guys
Good
later.
night.
Thank you. See you next week, Stacy.
All right, sounds good.
Bye.